So, Lindiwe, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity.
It's great to have you on the show. And Lindiwe, before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, so very interesting background. Born to a father who is a minister, pastor, born to a mother, a nurse. My father moved to Swaziland to start the AFM church there. So grew up in the church, so a church girl. I studied in Lesotho. I studied for a degree, a Bachelor of Education degree. The funny story, just before I go into what I studied, was I applied for, in my era, so a long time ago, you had to put in 3 choices, right? So I applied. One was law. That department was full. I applied social sciences. That department was full. And then I also applied for education. They had availability there. And that's how I studied for a Bachelor of Education. But I always say, God has his ways. I'm definitely a teacher at heart. I love teaching, coaching, mentoring. Just being a part of people's development is really what is close to my heart. So I'm glad I ended up there. I always say when my mom tells the story and she would tell it with a little bit of disappointment in her voice, and I'd always say to her, no, actually, I got exactly what I wanted, because human resources is a mixture of law, social work, and teaching. So I ended up exactly where I was meant to.
So is it fair to say, Lindiwe, that HR turned out to be a dream career?
Dream career, definitely in the right place. And a lot of people don't actually understand this. I have had a lot, because I've worked in banking for most of my life. And I've had a lot of opportunities where I've been approached by the executive or a CEO who say to me, oh no, you must definitely go into operations. The way you have a way with people, the way you are so performance and results oriented, you would do amazing in an operations environment. And I always say, yeah, but I want to be helping all of the people of the company to excel. And the best place to do that is to be in HR.
Oh, I guess you're not only helping all of the people at the company, but all of the people in the country. And
exactly.
Lindiwe, can you tell us who inspired you when you grew up?
Yeah, so when I grew up, raised a little bit by my grandmother. When my parents were still running around and not settled, my grandmother raised her whilst she was alive. That's a soul, strong Xhosa woman. She really, in fact, she continues to be my inspiration. I remember her words. In the era that I grew up in, other girl children, I believe, were being told a woman must not speak too loud. A woman must not be heard. A woman must, but not my grandmother. My grandmother wanted you to be very articulate in saying exactly what you needed to say, be clear what you're looking for. And, she took no prisoners. And so she was a great inspiration to me, because I saw a woman who was determined, who got what she needed to get in a very difficult environment, but who had a good heart, who fed everybody that came into the door. I don't even know how she was able to feed people in the way that she did. And so I learned from her to be courageous, to stand up for myself, but also to continue to have a good heart no matter what the circumstance.
Now, Lindiwe, you're leading a very impressive career. I believe you started your career at the World Bank. You then went on to become head of HR at Nedbank, human capital at African Bank, and now at AG. You're heading human capital. So looking back over your career, would you say there was a turning point, or maybe a number of turning points?
There were quite a number of turning points. I actually didn't start at the World Bank. I don't think many people would start at the World Bank. But so I started off, I taught a little bit, but my actual beginning of my career, believe it or not, was at the basement floor of a building in Parktown at the Independent Examinations Board. With my degree, I was in that basement packing exam papers, for private education, and the way I had been taught, it wasn't just with my degree, it was me and my pantyhose, I was taught when you go to work, you dress up. So it was me and my pantyhose with my degree in the basement packing exam papers. But very quickly, I climbed up in that organization, an organization called the Independent Examinations Body, the Independent Examinations Board. I'm still very grateful to that organization because there I progressed so quickly. They saw the potential in me. And so I will always articulate them as being the guys who were able to unleash my potential. They quickly promoted me into a training admin position, very quickly promoted me into being a training manager. By the time I left, I was a training manager at the IEB, and we did a lot of good work at outcomes-based education was coming out. We were funded by the German a German fund, and so we went around schools teaching principals, school teachers, governing bodies around what outcomes-based education was about. So that was a great turning point. That's how I got into an aspect of the HR field, which was training. And so maybe I'll then jump a few steps because then I went to McCarthy Motor Holdings, where I was training manager, and then I worked for a consulting company. And in that consulting company, we did diversity training. We did a lot of culture work. So helping organizations to do culture work. My second turning point was as a result of that organization, because that is where I was spotted to do work for the Reserve Bank, to do an organizational culture and climate work for the Reserve Bank. And that work just kept growing. We were meant to go in and out and do a survey and present the results of the survey. But from that survey work, we were then asked to consult on the organizational culture at the Reserve Bank. And it was that piece of work where someone from the World Bank, I still can't tell you who, how, but these things happen, spotted me. And I got this call from Washington saying, we're looking, heart drives me. That's what drives me. I believe that leaders and I've had many many discussions with leaders about heart. A lot of the time leaders think, oh, you lead with your mind, you're brilliant, you lead with your work speaks for you, you lead with performance, you lead with excellence. I believe all of these things come about because of the heart. It's the care for the people. It's the wanting to see people grow. It's the wanting to see people develop, and advance in their careers, and advance as humans, mostly. That's what drives me. If I can make impact to make people better versions of themselves, if I can make, and better versions of us, we're not schizophrenic, you're not a better version of yourself only at work. I believe when you're a better version of yourself, you're a better version of yourself across your life, whatever area of your life you're speaking to. So that really, really drives me, having an opportunity and finding an opportunity to make people excel in all areas of their lives.
Now, Lindiwe, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
It's quite funny. Before COVID, I would have answered this question very differently. Before COVID, all of us were obsessed about AIR, the future industrial, everything about what automation and the future of technology and and AIR and all of this. Those are all the things that I think that I was particularly driving, particularly having worked in the banking sector and how that was influencing the banking sector. And we needed our leaders to start to think differently. We needed leaders to be able to manage change. We needed our leaders to be better collaborators. We needed our leaders, and all of these things are still true for me today. But COVID, I think, taught us something very different as leaders. And I think if you were to ask me what my number one skill is for leadership for the future, it's adaptability. It is the ability as a leader to say, we are going there, and this is how we're going to get there. And I'm going to lead you to get there. And then, boom, something hits. And you go, okay, we've got to change course. Okay, we've got to go this way. And maybe whilst we go that way, we're going to. And that's what COVID taught us. All of a sudden, we all knew that we had access to our people. We could face-to-face them. And if there was a problem, you called everybody into a boardroom and you and all of a sudden as leaders, we had to very quickly learn how to still be able to connect to our people, but virtually. We learned that we still needed to keep organizations afloat. We need organizations viable, organizations, but we needed to do that in a different way, in a different manner. And yes, all of a sudden, the technology adaptation that we thought we still had a lot of time to navigate our people towards, all of a sudden that adaptation had to be instant, and so adaptability for sure is my number one skill of the future for leaders. And when I look for leadership, even today, I look for their ability to adapt to whatever the situation is, to be able to still deliver results, no matter what the situation is. My second one is leading with the heart. Because I promise you, in COVID, what was strong was that human-centeredness of saying, when we have a pandemic like this, how do we strongly connected and strongly mentally abled, And if you, as a leader, you were not able to do that, you couldn't get your people to work because you didn't have access to them, well, the usual access that you would have had to them, but you had to you had to care enough to be able to connect with them, even though hard, to keep them mentally fit and mentally strong. So, so like I said, very different, I think, view of what the future leadership capabilities need to be before COVID and after COVID.
Right. And Lindiwe, looking back over your own leadership journey, what do you consider most important for building future leaders? In other words, what is it we have to do more to develop, to encourage, and to elevate future leaders?
We've got to, some of the skill sets that I'm seeing our leaders struggle with. And for me, it's such an important aspect is, and maybe because now I'm also in the accounting profession, I think that's influencing me. I've always been in financial services. So, we groom leaders with a lot of technical skills, and we underplay what has often been called the soft skills, which are actually the hard skills, which are things like critical thinking, which are things like general business acumen, analytical skills, adaptability, leading with the heart. These are often all these skill sets that business has always believed are the tail end of what we're needing to be developed. But I think as you go higher and higher in your leadership role, it is actually those people skills that are the more important, because I don't think you can be an adaptable leader if you're not great, if you don't have great people skills. You have to be great at identifying potential very quickly. You have to be great at developing potential. You have to be great at removing obstacles. Great leaders today are the leaders who are able to work with their teams make sure their teams are performing at their best by removing obstacles. But you have to do that and lead from the heart. And a lot of the leaders that I've seen who get us into trouble, I mean, talk about the whatever you talk about, whether it's the banking fiasco of I think 2018, you know, if you think about that, what drove that? Greed, self-centeredness, self-preservation. Those are the enemies of leadership. You need a leader who's there not only for themselves, but who's there for others, there to serve, whether they're serving shareholders, but they're still serving. Whether they're serving, I obviously am in a position where I feel like I've been given a great opportunity to serve more than just the people at the AGSA, but we're serving country, which is amazing, an opportunity to impact public sector, and by doing that, impact the ordinary lives of citizens in South Africa. That it's like, it's the greatest job I've had the privilege of doing.
Now, Lindiwe, these are challenging times as the world is stumbling from one crisis into the next. What is your advice? What is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are maybe some of the biggest challenges they should expect to encounter and hopefully overcome in their career?
You know, I would do an injustice if I didn't particularly address women leaders. It would be an injustice, because I am a woman after all. And so often we think, because we now have a seat at the table as women, we think, yeah, those boxes are ticked, equality is attained. Unfortunately, equality is attained, but not equity. And equity is, how do I, as a woman, continue to thrive in my career, continue to open doors for other women in my career, whilst I'm not going to use balance, because I think balance is elusive. I'm going to use harmonize, whilst I harmonize my career aspirations. How do I do that today as a woman? And I think for women leaders, I particularly say, one of the things that I see haunting us as women is almost this having to be apologetic about having a life. You know, it's like, I'm sorry that I have a family. I'm sorry that I have children. I'm sorry that I'm pregnant and I have to take 4 months leave. No, you know, I wish I could tell the younger me, who was a leader, that said, my responsibility as a mother, my responsibility as a wife, my responsibility as a family member is as important as my leadership responsibility. And if anything, it makes me a better leader. And so future women leaders, do not be fooled. Do not allow yourself to assimilate and start acting like your male colleagues. Hold pride in the female, in what makes you female. And I think when you do that, you're not blindsided by the corporate world. So that was for my female leaders. And then I think generally in leadership, to all leadership, I can certainly say that the one thing leaders must always expect is challenges, something different. In fact, that's why you're a leader. You are a leader so that you can absorb what comes from the different crises that will hit us. We don't know what crisis will hit our country in 2 years' time, you know, but we have leaders, or we're grooming leaders, who would be able to absorb that type of shock. We're grooming leaders who can hopefully start to anticipate some of these things, prepare some of these things. But then if some of the things that hit us are not things that we are prepared, or we expect our leaders to be able to absorb them. You know, Nick, just a quick story. Often when I talk about to our leaders, whilst we're grooming leaders, our senior leaders as they grow up, I often say to them, guys, you cannot just leak, you know? So crisis comes, it comes into the top of the leadership, and it just goes, it wobbles down to the rest of the organization. No, we have leadership to be there, to be what I call the waterproof, you know, the waterproof. So crisis comes, it goes whoop, and then it finds, my goodness, there's a waterproof. Someone's going, okay, this can go down. This is absorbable. This can go further down into the organization. This we've got to hold still. And my view is that more and more and more of our leaders have got to have the resilience, the agility, the adaptability, to manage change. And that is probably one of the most critical skills we need our leaders to be aware of and to build. It's something I've had to build for myself as a leader, you know, absorbing, managing change, managing crisis, and being able to not just leak into the organization.
Now, Lindiwe, since you're mentioning skills, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are maybe one or two key skills you would want to factor in and maybe teach?
I would actually have a module called Leading with the Heart. I think that's the module I would want to teach. You know, how do I not pack my heart when I enter the premises of my employer? Because I promise you that leaders who are more aware of people, who give themselves time to learn about their teams and therefore better navigate their teams, leaders who are able to build potential, leaders who are able to develop people, leaders who are able to care and ensure the well-being of their people, leaders who are able to, as a result, manage change better, leaders who are able to solve problems, remove burdens or hindrances to performance problems. Leaders who do that are much better leaders for our future. They are the leaders who will ensure that any technological advances that come, people will have first the appetite, the resilience to absorb the change and adopt. They create early adopters, those type of leaders.
Now, Lindiwe, as a mentor to many future leaders, can you please share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Yeah, I am very passionate about mentoring, particularly people who are in HR, because very quickly I realized, and I mentor a lot of people outside of HR, particularly around EQ, you know, because generally have very high EQ, very many clever people, but who don't know how to deal with people, and therefore struggle in leadership roles. But I think many of my success stories would be, there are many people that I mentored in HR who have become HR leaders in other financial services companies. And these are people who would have come in with a technical understanding of what HR is. In fact, funny enough, I should probably talk about leaders who I've mentored who actually left technical jobs and joined HR. You know, because they thought, oh my goodness, I now understand why HR is so important. I now understand how developing others. So there is, I'm actually remembering one or two who left technical jobs, who would have been in operations, would have been in ops job and climbing that cliff, who decided, I want to be a coach. I actually want to go into coaching and rather help in unleashing the potential of other people. So mentoring heads of HR has been something that I've been able to do, but also mentoring technical strong leaders who have become coaches and helped other leaders to advance into higher positions.
Now, Lindiwe, looking back over your own leadership journey, are there any role models of leadership that you encountered and maybe worked with that you would recommend future leaders should learn from?
You know, it's actually quite funny when you think about that. People would often think you've got big names, but one of the first ladies I till today admire so much was a lady called Megan Pahad. She was the wife of a minister in the presidency at the time. Man, she was at the IEB. That woman taught me how to care for people. Her heart for people was so big. And she was I'll call her the CEO of the IEB at that particular time. But the way she related to every level of people for me. So Meg Pahad, if you ever get to hear this, definitely one of my first and closest leaders that I still remember. And then, of course, there are many South African leaders that I can think of that, and some of them have not necessarily mentored me, but I've just looked and followed their journey, and I look at them and I'm so proud of them. I've got to mention first Mary Vilagazi, you know, currently a CEO at First National Bank. I mean, when I look at Mary's career, I remember a time when I was at African Bank and we were trying to recruit her just before actually she got the role at FNB. We were trying to recruit her into African Bank. Again, a woman leader who's happy to be a woman, who's not trying to be a man, who cares for the people, who's as strong as her male counterparts, but it is stronger because of the fact that she's happy to tap into her womanhood. Our Auditor General, first Black Auditor General, Zakani, man, I often look at our AG and I think, where does she take time in her hands? She is leading the organization. She is talking to all our whether politicians, ministers. She is a mother. She is a family elder sister. You know, her work ethic is beyond any work ethic I have ever seen, and she carries each of those roles so graciously. So I mean, I could go on and on, but I've given you three, and I'm sorry that they're all women. It doesn't mean that I don't look up to men. It just means I admire so much women who are able to, maybe internationally, Michelle Obama, I think that's everyone's. We all look up to her because, man, she was the pillar behind Barack Obama. She didn't just sit there and enjoy the perks that came with being first lady. You know, she showed her heart. You know, she got involved and participated in just advancing the lives of many others during that period. So I think you get a sense of the type of people that for me, it's excellence, great work ethic, but all doing it with heart.
Thank you. Now, Lindiwe, where can our listeners follow you and how can they connect with you?
So I am on LinkedIn. I am on Instagram. I by the way, if you have my number, like my heart is on my WhatsApp status consistently. You literally will tell the type of person I'm consistently posting about leadership, which is, you know, one of my greatest passions. I'm consistently posting about leading from the heart. I'm consistently posting about what makes teams work. And so just as simple as that, you know, I am, yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on my WhatsApp statuses, you can find me Yeah, I'm on Instagram as well.
Thank you. And Lindiwe, last but not least, what is your message to the millions of learners who are looking to finish school, to start a career? What are maybe one or two success principles that they should keep in mind?
You know, I really wish someone had told me this when I was younger. A door that's shut can be opened. You know, for some reason, you know, if someone shut the door for me for something, I always thought, okay, that door's not mine, and go look for another door. You know, as I've gotten older, I've realized, no, open the door, break it down. You know, and so that's the advice I would give. But also that failure is a part of the journey. You know, sometimes you don't get it right the first time, but you can try the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and maybe even the sixth. You know, failure is a part of the journey. It's not the end. You can still get up. You've not lost a fight that you get up from.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lindiwe, for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and for inspiring so many future leaders.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nick. I really appreciate the time. What a pleasure.
Thank you.